Hello, and welcome back to our CAEL language series. Today, we're going to continue working on some writing skills, specifically on how to revise our work and make sure it's as strong as it can be before we submit it on our CAEL test for marks. This will be our second practice with this activity. So when we come to the short writing piece in CAEL, we are looking at part 5 of the test. This is the very last question that we would do for the CAEL test itself. We will have 10 minutes to write a paragraph, and we need to do a couple of things to make sure we maximize our score. So first of all, the content details that we're writing about for this question will come from one of the source materials that we've already covered on the test. It will either be the long reading or the long listening section. So those details, once we include them in our writing, must be expressed in our own words. So we'll be paraphrasing the details from the source. We have to achieve at least 100 words when we type out this paragraph. And we're always going to be evaluated on how strong our content is, as well as how well we organize those details within the paragraph. We're going to be graded too on our language use. It is an academic test, so we need to make sure that the language reflects that. And we're also going to be graded on how well we do use that source material. Now, looking at the question here on the screen, we can see that it says, based on the reading passage, how have changes to sports equipment improved athletic performance at the Olympic Games? Now, remember, we already would have finished reading through that long reading passage before we write this question, or the answer rather. So we're quite familiar with the reading passage itself. But in the 10 minutes we've got, we likely want to review that source. So if we come over here and click on that reading passage tab, it will pull up that exact same passage that we've already completed. So we can skim read it now and pull out any relevant details that answer the question at hand. We'll use that middle scroll bar there to navigate down to the end of that passage as we need to. Now we're going to type our answer right here, right on the computer screen. And as we do so, the word counter is going to adjust in live time. So we do need to make sure that that word counter says 100 words at a minimum before we can submit this on CAEL for full marks. Now, again, just like we did in the last episode, we are using the same question you might recognize, but we've got a different body paragraph here that we're going to look at together. So for the purposes of today's episode, we're going to assume we've already gone through that reading passage. We pulled out the relevant details that we need to answer the question. And that's what we're looking at here. So this paragraph is actually our draft. We haven't yet proofread it. We haven't read it back to see if there are any mistakes that we can fix. And that's what we're going to do now. So can I please give you about 20 seconds or so to skim read over this paragraph? As you're reading, please look for any grammar or writing mistakes you might find. Look for ways to improve the quality. There might be some words or ideas we can add in. There might also be some words we should take out. And again, I'll give you about 20 seconds or so, and then we'll continue talking about it together. Okay, if you need more time to read that, you can stop the video now or pause it. But we're going to continue on now and discuss the mistakes that we find so that we can make this piece of writing a little bit better. So the very first thing I noticed before we even get into the writing itself is the word count here at the bottom of the screen. So the word count is okay right now. We have to achieve 100 words at least, and we've more than done that. So we're just fine there. We don't have to worry too much about that right now. So looking back now at the top of this paragraph, I'd like to go through it sentence by sentence and just check over again to see if there's any mistakes. So in orange here, this is our topic sentence. So I'll read it out. I do see two tiny mistakes, as a matter of fact, that I would fix here. This says, modern technology has vastly improved sport equipment used by athletes at the Olympic Games to improve their performance. So that word sport equipment, we just forgot the S. It's a very small mistake to fix, but we better fix it now while we find it. So sports equipment is correct. We will be talking about several examples of equipment from different sports. So it just makes sense to make that word plural. The other mistake I noticed, and I'm hoping you did as well, it's right here. So the word there, in this case, is spelled wrong. We're looking for this kind of there. These words are called homonyms. So they sound exactly the same, but they're spelled differently. And we have to choose the correct one because the meanings themselves are very different. So this is the correct version of the word there that we need to use. So I think that first sentence now looks okay. Let's move on to the second part. So this one says, today's swimming pools have a bumpy rubber coating on either end to allow swimmers to have a better grip when turning at the end of a lap. Okay, there is at least one tiny mistake I noticed again right at the beginning here. So this word today's is missing the apostrophe. It should look like this. So we use that apostrophe S when we're showing belonging to or possession. So in this sentence, it's really the swimming pool that is belonging to today. So that's why we need that apostrophe S, today's swimming pools. Now, the other little mistake I'd like to fix is the fact that we've gone straight from our topic sentence that introduces what we're talking about right into the first example of the equipment, but we've not used any transition whatsoever. So it would be very helpful for our readers to see a transition in a very logical place here. So I think right about there would be a nice spot to stick this transition in. Today's swimming pools, for example, have a bumpy rubber coating on either end to allow swimmers to have a better grip when turning at the end of a lap. I think grammatically this is okay. It's not really a mistake as far as the grammar goes. But what I'm noticing here, these two structures that are underlined, these are both examples of infinitive verb structures. And we've used two of them so closely together in the same sentence. So one of the things the readers want to see is more of a variety in our writing. So I think rather than repeat that same structure twice, and it does sound a little bit awkward, I think if we could rewrite this, so that first one that says to allow swimmers to have, if we change that verb just a little bit, if we try to give swimmers, then we can take out that second infinitive altogether, and the rest of that sentence makes sense. So to give swimmers a better grip when turning. So again, we've eliminated that repetition, and we've also made it a little bit less awkward for the reader. So I think that's a pretty sound revision to make. Okay, next on to this. So we've got quite a long sentence here. It says turbulence is created by the kicking and arm motions of the athletes. Pools are also equipped with turbulence damping grills that eliminate waves to create calm waters. It's a really long sentence, but as a matter of fact, we've got two sentences here side by side. This is what we call a run-on sentence. More specifically, we call this a comma splice. So what the writer here has done is taken two completed sentences, and instead of just ending them right there where that comma is, they've just kept it going. And sometimes when we put too many ideas into that big long sentence, it really confuses the reader. And the fact that we have two complete sentences on either end, we have to do something to separate them. So we have a couple of choices. We could technically turn that comma into a period and then just start the next sentence as a new sentence. Or we can add a conjunction or a connecting word to one half of the sentence. And that way it's going to set us up for either a complex or a compound sentence. So I think what I'd like to do to fix this is we're going to add in a conjunction right at the beginning. So right there, we're going to add the word since, and we're going to continue the sentence from there. So I'll read it out aloud again. The first half of the sentence is the secondary part. We call it the dependent clause when we're writing. In this case, we can correctly now use that comma and connect it to the rest of the sentence. So that second part that starts with the word pools, this is the independent clause. This is the main part of the sentence. So by connecting these two types of clauses together correctly, we have created a complex sentence. Anyway, I'll read the whole thing out again as it's meant to be read. Since turbulence is created by the kicking and arm motions of the athletes, pools are also equipped with turbulence damping grills that eliminate waves to create calm waters. Okay. The next sentence says, these grills guarantee that waves will not impact the speed of the swimmers. and interfere with the outcome of the race. I don't see anything I would fix there. I think that's perfectly fine. So let's leave it and we'll move on to the next part here. So computer technology and engineered mapping systems are making canoeing and kayaking more competitive. Okay, that sentence is correct the way it's written. But the problem I notice is that we're now into another example of a different type of equipment. So just earlier, we were talking all about the swimming pool and those grills. We're now talking about this computer technology for canoeing and kayaking. So we need to have some sort of a transition to connect these two examples together. So let's add the transition at the end this time, just to have some variety. It doesn't have to be complex. Let's just throw a really simple transition in. So we can say as well. In other words, here's another idea or another example is what we're saying. So we move on. We say race organizers for these boating events use computing software to build the entire course, placing each turn and each rock in a location that makes for the most challenging and competitive race. Oof, okay, this is a complex sentence, and technically the sentence structure is correct from a grammar standpoint. But here's a situation where I think we've got too much detail in one sentence. Even though it's a complex sentence, even though we want to show the readers we know how to write complex sentences, sometimes it's better to shorten the ideas and chunk them separately because it will make the ideas a lot easier to understand. So what I would recommend we do is, again, break these two sentences apart. So I would like to end the first sentence right after the word course. We're taking away that comma and we're just going to finish the sentence there. You'll also notice that I've taken out one word. See that word computing for software? I don't think we need both. I think it becomes a bit wordy. So now we've got a simple sentence, but it's a lot more concise, a lot more clear, I think. So because we've removed the word placing, we're no longer just continuing on with the idea. We have to start a new idea. So that means we're going to be adding in the subject they, and we're going to use the verb place. So again, we've just rewritten the structure, but we're keeping the idea the same. So now we're saying they place each turn and rock in a location and so on. Again, I don't think we need that word each twice. It sounds just a bit repetitive and it gets a bit wordy. So I think it's a lot easier to read when we remove a few words and again, break that very long and complicated idea into two separate sentences. All right, let's have a look at our very final sentence. We've got, as sports equipment is enhanced, athletes will have better opportunities to show stronger performances. I think this is okay. There's maybe a word choice that I would fix. I'm finding the word show quite casual, and this is an academic piece. So let's just change it so slightly. Let's just make it showcase. It sounds a lot higher level, but it means the same thing. The only other tiny addition I would make is right here at the end. So if you look back at the question at the top there, we're talking about the Olympic Games. So we might as well add that part in at the very end. So we remind the reader specifically what we're talking about when we're referencing all these examples of sports. So I think that makes for a better ending, more precise, which is a good thing. So now what we should do, I think, because we've gone through that bit by bit, it's super helpful to read an entire piece of writing in one fluid motion before you're ready to move on. So again, as you're writing on your CAEL test, remember you've got 10 minutes. So you're spending probably a good, maybe 30 seconds just to gather some ideas. You're probably writing for about 8 minutes to 8.5 minutes to get your paragraph down. If we can save even 30 to 45 seconds to do a read through at the end, that would be ideal. Even more time would be great. But again, we have to keep an eye on that clock. Now down at the bottom again, before we read this over one final time, I notice my word count is still just fine. I think we started with 151 words, so we've added a few words, but our word count was never an issue anyways because we only need 100. So we're just fine. Again, in CAEL, there's no maximum. You can write as long as you need to, provided you do so in the time allotted on the test. So let's read this back together here. It says, modern technology has vastly improved sports equipment used by athletes at the Olympic Games to improve their performance. Today's swimming pools, for example, have a bumpy rubber coating on either end to give swimmers a better grip when turning at the end of a lap. Since turbulence is created by the kicking and arm motions of the athletes, pools are also equipped with turbulence damping grills that eliminate waves to create calm waters. These grills guarantee that waves will not impact the speed of the swimmers and interfere with the outcome of the race. Computer technology and engineered mapping systems are making canoeing and kayaking more competitive as well. Race organizers for these boating events use software to build the entire course. They place each turn and rock in a location that makes for the most challenging and competitive race. As sports equipment is enhanced, athletes will have better opportunities to showcase stronger performances at the Olympic Games. So I think that's much stronger. Again, the paragraph we started with was pretty well done, you would say. But we've fixed up just a few minor writing issues, and we've also added in some transitions and revised some sentence structures. And usually those are the typical revisions that we would make anyway on a test to make sure it showcases our best work before the time is up and before it gets submitted for the raters to assess. So let's finish up here today just by reviewing the major writing revisions that we would make on an ongoing basis, whether it's for a test or just for our daily writing. So I always look at the revisions in two different areas. So we'll start with the content and the structure here. So it's really important for paragraph writing that we have a topic sentence somewhere that introduces exactly what we're talking about. And that's, of course, going to answer the question at hand. So in our first sentence for this paragraph, we made sure to establish that we would be talking about examples of equipment that have undergone improvements in order to enhance the athlete's performance. And this was done specifically at the Olympics. So all of those details were found in that topic sentence. So the reader has no doubt what the rest of the paragraph will be about. What we did when we revised is very helpfully added in just a handful of transitions. They don't need to be complicated, but they do need to be there. So we had 3 examples of equipment. So we added in some transitions like for example, and as well as, and so on. And again, that just smooths out the ideas and connects them all together, which enhances the overall unity of the piece. The vocabulary was fairly strong to begin with, but we adjusted just a few words. So again, the one at the very end, instead of show, we said showcase, for example. So little tiny adjustments like that can sometimes make a big improvement too. Now, we don't want to repeat the same words or even the same sentence structure. So remember, we did take out a couple of those infinitive verbs. We didn't want to just repeat that structure in that one sentence. So we changed that. And there were the word each, I recall, in the towards the bottom of the passage. So each rock and each turn, that was quite repetitive too. So we took out that word each and so on. So we're looking to cut down on the repetition. In some cases too, if you've got a similar idea, so say in your topic sentence, you introduce the topic one way. By the time you get to your concluding statement and you're summarizing, you might have the same idea, but you're going to need to find different words in order to express that idea so that it doesn't sound word for word the same. And that's going to add interest and variety to the writing and help you improve your score as well overall. Okay, now sentence structure is so important for an academic test. We want to avoid writing short, simple sentences. So we're trying to write complex and compound. But again, we had a really good example today of one sentence that was complex, all right, but it was even still, it was far too long and complicated. So you'll need to make a judgment call. If we have so many ideas that we're starting to lose sight of what we're talking about, that's when it's best to actually divide that long idea into 2 separate sentences. So sometimes using a simple sentence structure might be the best choice. Again, it's a judgment call, but please make an effort to vary the structure. You should have some complex, some compound, a few simple sentences would be fine, and so on. So again, vary your structure. A concluding statement is really important. It usually does summarize the main point, which is what we did. Now, we did not add a next step today. We did that in last week's episode. If you wanted to go back and have a look there, I think we had more than enough today. We were well over the word count, and we likely wouldn't have had much more time than to add in another sentence. So just summarizing what the main point was more than enough for today. And again, we met that 100 word minimum, which was helpful. Okay, so the content and structure is one thing to keep an eye for. Grammar and writing, of course, is really important too. So we did not make any subject verb agreement or verb tense errors today. I don't think we even had any spelling or preposition errors. So we did fairly well with the writing aspect. These 4 grammatical elements, though, are quite commonly when we're tired at the end of a test. Sometimes we're not super careful with the writing. sometimes these mistakes can creep in. So they're just something to look out for when you're doing your own proofreading back. I know we did have an apostrophe error. There was a punctuation mark that we missed. So that was maybe one little thing from the writing that we had. So again, article usage sometimes can be problematic. So just double check you put your articles where they need to be. Sentence fragments and run-on sentences are two of the more major types of errors. Now, we didn't have a fragment today. A fragment is sort of half of a sentence. It's missing a subject or a verb. The run-on sentence, though, we did have one of those. So we had two completed sentences that were just combined together with a comma. And we can't do that because, again, it confuses the reader. They don't understand where one idea starts and ends, and the next idea begins and ends as well. So we either have to stop the sentences from running in. So we put an end punctuation like a period. Or in the case today, we actually added in a conjunction. We added in the word since to the beginning of the sentence, and we turned it into a complex sentence. So we corrected the grammar mistake and made a complex sentence at the same time, which is a really good type of revision to make. All right, so let's leave it there for today. Hopefully you've got some other tips on how to improve your own writing as you're reading it back to yourself. Please join me next time and we will continue to work on our skills.